Welcome to the Underwater Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of underwater portrait photography, cinematography, and everything in between. With me, your host, Brett Stanley. This week on the Underwater Podcast, we're learning how to value our work with fine art photographer Mallory Morrison. Mallory has perfected her ethereal and minimal style underwater, and also her print sales process. She shares with us how she got started working with dancers underwater, how she channels her fears and nightmares into her work as a kind of therapy, and her approach to creating art that sells. Okay, let's dive in. Mallory, welcome to the Underwater Podcast.
Thank you so much, Brett. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. I don't know if I've told you or not, but I mean, we spoke about a week ago, just as a pre-thing for the interview.
Yeah.
But you were like one of the first inspirations for me in underwater photography. You were doing things that I'd never seen before, taking things underwater and beds and all that sort of stuff. You're kind of one of the reasons that I do what I do today. So thank you.
I know this is audio, not visual, but I'm blushing.
Oh, good.
Thank you. That really means a lot to me. And although I've kind of moved away in the last years from working with props, that definitely kind of started the inspiration path of like, okay, what can I put under there? What will that do? And how, creating a scene, how does that tell a story?
Yeah. And I think that really came through with what you were doing. So the way I found you years ago was through a YouTube show called The Framed Show. And I didn't realize how long ago that was until I went looking for it the other day. And it's almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, 2011. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
This time just flies.
I know. And I still, I do kind of reference that video a lot. I mean, it's a half an hour episode.
Yeah.
So it's pretty long, but I actually end up using that as a reference, like teaching guide almost for anyone who's working with me for the first time, especially models. And I say, hey, check this out. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think at the time I was really impressed and surprised about how much detail there was in that, how much behind the scenes was actually happening. And I think it's a really good teaching tool because it shows what you're doing kind of lighting wise and technically, but it's also got a lot of information about how to deal with models and props. And even I think there's an interview from your safety guy talking about stuff.
Yeah. All of the people that come together to make it happen. It's definitely not just one person. That's for sure.
So how did you get into it? Let's take it right back to the beginning.
Yeah.
How did you get into underwater photography? Is that where you started or was there a life before that?
There were a few lives before that. So I entered the underwater world, I feel like pretty differently than most people do. I grew up as a ballet dancer. So I started when I was 4. I had to quit when I was 28, a knee injury. So I had to stop. But during those last few years of dancing, I was going through college and photography was a hobby for me. I learned from my dad, who was also a hobbyist photographer in middle school, high school. And when I got to college, I took my first photography class just as basically a lower division class within the art department because I knew I wanted to be in art, but I was going to be a sculptor. I was into ceramics pretty heavily in high school. And so I was like, I'm going to have a little pottery studio and had no concept of like making money. I just decided, this will somehow work out. And I took a photography class, like my first actual class. And I realized, okay, this feels really right to me. And what I had access to were dancers. And I was co-directing a student-run dance performance. And so I had access to like all the dress rehearsals. And so while watching as the director, I also was taking pictures of everything. And then that ended up being my senior project that I ended up showing in a gallery. And a stranger that I'd never met that ended up at the gallery bought one of the pieces. And that totally shifted things for me of like, okay, so I'm on the right track here. I love art and I like the idea of the fine art side of things. So then, so that was at UC Santa Cruz. And then when I decided to continue on and get a second bachelor's degree, which is kind of ridiculous for a photographer because you don't even need a degree to begin with. But it really was it was my path of how I was able to kind of find my way. And I went to Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, and I was still shooting dancers, and I was able to kind of take them off the stage and bring them into the studio. And that's where the change happened. Was I was getting really frustrated with being in the studio with a 9-foot wide seamless and concrete floors and stationary lights and a moving subject. And the frustrating part was that I wanted them to jump and just stay there. Stay right in the middle. Don't have a hand go off and be off the seamless or out of the light. And I would be bringing in trampolines and crash pads like for gymnasts to get them to be able to kind of stay up there longer. And there was this moment I had when I was just about to fall asleep one night, when just sort of like your conscious mind is going to sleep and your subconscious is connecting some dots. And I realized, oh, okay, my problem is gravity. Okay, great. Whoa. Okay, so all I need to do is just suspend gravity. Okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, got it. I'll just go to NASA.
And is that where your brain went? Was like space first, or did you?
No, I think it was just. I think at that time, that was 2007. I feel like I had seen some imagery just through school. There's so much imagery that that's coming at us. I might have come across an underwater fashion shot or something. So I think that was just in the back of my head. And I was like, oh, if I put them in water, then all of those problems go away and a whole bunch of new problems come. But so I tried it once, and I didn't even have an idea that I would have to be weighted down. So I kept popping up to the surface. So my assistant at the time had to hold my shoulders down and hold me underwater while I shot with another friend's surf housing that only was buoyant and would only have a shutter release button. That's the only button on the housing. And so I had to quickly look before the image went away just to see if I'm on the right track. And looking through those images, the first shoot, I was just mesmerized. And so my journey towards underwater was a solution to a problem I was having. And it was a tool that I could use to create the imagery that I see in my head as a dance photographer.
That's incredible, because that's such a different way of coming to it than a lot of people I've spoken to, and even myself, where we shoot underwater because we want to be underwater. Why not take photos while you're down there? Right. Whereas for you, you've come from, like you say, having a solution to a problem.
Right.
Were you a water person to start with? Are you drawn to the water, or it was purely just to solve this problem?
I tried out for swim team in high school. Didn't make it past a few weeks, mostly just timing wise. I couldn't be able to get to do ballet and swimming at the same time. I couldn't get the flip. Like I'd always go sideways and nose up my water up my nose. Yeah. And so I, as a dancer, water is a place of complete release. And it's just, I think everyone feels that it's really relaxing to be able to kind of float around, but to be able to move in a way that you're not bound by gravity, that you can kind of spin and spin and spin and float and move in this 3D space, that the effect of water is what really drew me to it. But I was never really a strong swimmer, but I am an Aquarius. So I guess that it's just my destiny.
You've got that water sign. Yeah.
And so it started off as a solution to a problem, but it has morphed and evolved into an absolute partner of creation for me. That we together, the water and I together, come together to make it, and then utilizing that environment not just for the anti-gravity, but for the different themes and stories that can be told specifically because it's in water.
It's an interesting kind of way to think of it, as the water is a partner to you. So for me, when I came to underwater photography, it felt like it completed me. For me, it felt like this was the tool that I was lacking to make the images that I was seeing. And it was a way to, I don't know, not just like you say, like not just the weightlessness, but it's also the atmosphere under the water, the feeling of being under the water, and that aesthetic. I think for me personally was when everything clicked for me. That's when I became an artist. That's when I became a photographer. Everything before that was just leading up to this point. Is that kind of how you felt too? Was it like this total light bulb moment?
Yeah, it was like the dance photography that what I was creating in the studio. There was just always something missing. And even when there was an image that, they jumped just right, the hair's going, the fabric's just perfect, that moment that can never be recreated again was still full. It only was special to me for a moment, and then it just kind of dulled. It was either I've seen that before, or I am bored with it. I was like, okay, I've seen people do it better, actually. And the benefit and difficulty of my mindset in that way of looking at what's out there and comparing myself to the absolute great photographers out there as a student is difficult, uphill climb, but also, it always pushes you to get better.
Exactly. Because you can see that there is somewhere to climb too.
Yeah.
You can see that it's possible.
Yeah. And that I didn't know that was something that was missing. I didn't know what I was looking for until I found it.
Yeah. And so when you finally got underwater and you had your assistant basically try to drown you, how did it go from there? What was it like taking these dancers that you've been working with on the dry land to take them underwater? Was there a transition period for them to get used to it as well?
Oh, yeah. It was the communication thing, being able to, in the studio, being able to say, great, do it again. Okay, this time, good. Remember, careful. Look at the arm. Watch that. There was so many
instant feedback kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I, as photographers in general, we're used to being able to do that. And so that was the biggest shift for me, is to really be able to clearly communicate what I want in words. But then also I found myself kind of getting more into a choreographer director role of kind of showing them a little bit of what I want them to do, not necessarily go in the deep end and do it exactly, but, standing in the shallow end, standing outside of the pool and showing them what works and what doesn't work. And so it felt a little bit more like dance teacher sort of situation. And I fell into that role without really thinking of it, but then later realizing, oh, that is actually a big strong suit that I have that not necessarily everybody has, is that I have that ability to communicate that way that it isn't just words.
Yeah. And I think that is such a skill in underwater photography, because a lot of us, I think, think we can work with dancers, but if we don't know how to tell them what we want, it's kind of hard for them to understand what we want. Whereas you've got that background, you know the language to be able to talk to them.
Right. And that's, I think, what I've, throughout my whole underwater shooting career, I've been really focused on the deliberate body language and posing, that it isn't just an accident that they look graceful, that it isn't necessarily that I'm saying each limb needs to be placed here, here, and here, and here, but I'm waiting for that all to come together, and knowing when that moment really is, and understanding that when I catch it before and after, even if, the hair looks really good there, but nope, the legs aren't right, that isn't the image. And
right.
knowing and being able to kind of cull through your images and edit through them to really decide what is the image and what looks like an outtake. There there are a ton of outtakes with underwater, ton of outtakes. And that's the process that I end up going through when I shoot is after I shoot, at that end of the day, I don't download my pictures right away. I just kind of bask in the glow of the experience of it. And then the next day I know to expect a little bit of a dip in confidence because I have to look through all of these images, and there are the good ones, they're in there, but they're surrounded by all of this outtake, bubbles going, things flying up, and that's just the nature of it. So I know that I'm like, okay, I need to look through all of them, and then all the bad ones I literally just erase, I delete them.
Right. You don't want them in your life at all.
I have no use for them, and nor does the model. And it's a little bit of a kind of a respect to the model too, of like, there isn't that bad shot isn't out there for either of us to be seen, and just really respecting my subject and their abilities to making sure that I'm showing them in their best light, and I'm not showing any work that makes them feel look like less. Look less than what they can do. Yeah.
I think that's a thing that we have as photographers, because we're dealing with the still image, we're dealing with one slice of time, that we have a responsibility to make sure that slice of time is the good one, because there's so many slices of time on either side that aren't as great. And I always have this thing where I'm watching a music video, or I'm watching, a movie or something, and I'm thinking, you can have bad moments in there, but they're always made up for by the following moments, which are good. And so you can watch a video where someone looks terrible for a couple of seconds, but then they look good, and you'll forget about the bad stuff. But if you're looking at a still image for, 20, 30 seconds, you will see every little thing that is wrong or doesn't work for you personally. And I feel like there's a lot of responsibility from our point of view to be able to create an image that doesn't have anything bad about it, which is, I think, what we all strive for.
Yeah. And I think that from the model's point of view, there needs to be a lot of trust in us to know when the right shot is. And I think that is immediately fast forwarded for me with people that I haven't worked with before, knowing that I'm a dancer as well. I feel that they're like, okay, you get it. You get it. I'm in your hands. And so I think that kind of lends itself to them being more comfortable to try new things that they are maybe thinking, oh, I might look really weird from the majority of this right now, but I trust that you're going to see that and see when the moment is, and trust to know that, to say, hey, you know what, that's not working. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Because we try things that, if you don't have that trust, then you're going to, as a model, you're going to want to stay in the safe zone. It's like, I know I look good here. I'm going to stay here, And so I feel like we can kind of push it a little bit.
How much feedback are you giving them as you're shooting? Are you letting them see the back of the camera, or are you just letting them go off what you're telling them?
I mean, it all depends on the model, because sometimes models don't want to see it. Yeah. And I also don't show them every single time, because that disrupts the flow of things. But I feel the benefit of being able to be shooting digitally and is to once again have another tool to communicate with to them, to say, do you see how this doesn't look quite right? But then do you see how this does? That I might not necessarily be able to have the words, because words, talking, oddly enough, is my least favorite form of communication. Words.
I'm glad I've forced you into it.
I know. No, I'm working on it. That there's just so much nuance, and there's so much to be said in the unsaid. And so to be able to show them what's working, and every once in a while what's not working, only if they don't seem to be moving past it. If I keep trying to give them the same correction and then they keep doing it, then there needs to be, okay, I need to find another way of going about communicating this. Yeah. But mostly it's for the good ones, because it's difficult. to be in their position. And so to have that confidence boost, it's really a confidence boost thing. And like, yeah, okay. Oh my God, we already got something really good. Ooh, you know what? Ooh, let's try this. And it really kind of, it aids the collaboration.
Yes.
Because they're seeing what is the end product. And so they're able to see, to envision, they know what they can do. I don't know the limits of what they can do.
Yeah.
I can have ideas of posing and body language that I want them to express, but it's really so much to do with in the moment when what they can do, also with what they're wearing. You know, their limitations based on what kind of limitations I've put on them, what I've put them in, you know, and or the size of the pool or whatever. So yeah, so it definitely pushes it forward to have that to see the visual, but then also to have that communication. So pretty much every time we come up, because I'm never on scuba. I am not scuba certified. I haven't found it necessary. I'm free diving. Yeah, I'm in the shallow end. I'm only under about a foot.
Yeah,
and I'm weighted down in the shallow end, and they're in the deep end. I have yet to find it necessary to be on scuba. Also, I just feel like if you're breathing out with scuba, that the bubbles are going to have an issue coming up in front of the lens. And so I've found that I like to kind of be stripped down as close to possible as the model is. Like I need to have goggles on and a weight belt, and that's about it. But I'm in there with them and we're experiencing the same thing. I'm holding my breath as long as they are. And so now I can kind of gauge if I'm tired. That means they are definitely tired. And there's a lot of adrenaline that goes into these shoots, especially if it's the first time that they're doing underwater. And so they might be ignoring their body's signals, and therefore there's a possibility of them crashing hard before we're really done, because they're exerting themselves way too hard up front and they're sprinting a marathon. And so if I'm able to gauge my tired level and I'm able to take a big breath of air and just sit under there, then they definitely need a break. And so instead of checking in and asking, are you okay? Are you okay? I just say, hey, let's take a break. That I keep the pace, but then also I communicate with them a lot beforehand, that we kind of have a little session beforehand where we are actually stretching together. Yeah. And in that stretching, we're just talking about kind of how I want to go about things. And even when we're stretching, it's like we're kind of practicing being in sync with each other, that we're kind of getting a sense of doing something together and communicating what I want them to do, or what is possible, what I would like to see happen. And then we can kind of have a game plan together. Yeah. Yeah.
And how much, so if you've do you kind of start a shoot with a definite vision in mind, or are you just kind of having, sort of rough kind of sketches in your mind, and then what happens on the day happens? How much are you kind of controlling the output?
Combination of the two. So usually how I shoot is I'm shooting a series of work, and that'll be over multiple shoots, most likely, different models. But I have a theme. I have an idea in mind. For instance, a series that I did was called Presence, and it was like most of my series. It was born from my journey of what I'm working through personally. And at the time I was getting into meditation and trying to be mindful and just really in the present moment and not being lost in thoughts of the future or the past. And I found that, being underwater is the most present you can be, especially when you're holding your breath. Yeah. You are absolutely present in that very, very moment. When I'm under there, it's completely silent, and all I can hear is the shudder and my heartbeat. And that, I think, plays a big part in how much I enjoy it, because I am so very present in there. So I thought, let's explore that idea visually, and not just being kind of at the end of this path, but actually going through the process of shedding the tape loop that goes on in our head, the frustration, the kind of torrent of emotions that go on in our head in water, because we have bubbles, we have motion, we have all of these things, and the kind of the progression and everything. So I had written down for that series, I had written down a whole bunch of kind of keywords for the difficulty, the process, the kind of basically not living mindfully sort of, keywords. And then also words that were focused on, being mindful and being present. And I talked those over with the models beforehand. And do any of these words resonate with you? And does that elicit some sort of movement to you? And that's really modern dance right there. It's improv modern dance,
And so you're letting them kind of interpret the words you're giving them and the kind of the theme.
Yeah. And so, because, it's a journey for me, but I also, all of my work, I want to be able to have other people collaborate, and the final product, I want them, the viewer of the work, to be able to say, yes, that I understand that. I get that. I want there to be something that someone can relate to, and not necessarily to be as broad as I can, but I'm not usually working on themes of super, super, super specific story, one event that happened in my life. It's feelings that are happening that I'm processing. And I mean, even I've even processed out nightmares and kind of taken parts of a nightmare at feeling mostly and put that underwater. And that's a way for me to visually kind of see it. And then it kind of sheds light on the boogeyman a little bit of like, oh, see, it's not that scary. Actually, I've made it a little beautiful, and it can still be a little haunting and mysterious, but it's still has its beauty too.
So are you using the underwater photography sometimes like therapy?
I mean, isn't art therapy anyway? I mean,
even if we admit it or not, I think, yeah.
Creating art. I mean, and also viewing art and owning it too. And so I like that. I really, after having the experiences of selling the work and selling work, especially to strangers, that was like the big crux for me, was that someone that they don't have any vested interest in me. They don't like the work because, oh, Mallory made it. They like it because there's something in there that is speaking to them really deeply, and it's important to them to see that all the time in their house. And I place a lot of value in your in my surroundings, and that it's so important, and I'm pretty affected by my environment, for better or worse, and so I feel like it's the most. I feel so honored when someone chooses to have my work in their home and see that all the time, and have that emotion and response, have that in their daily life. So that does inform the creation of the work too.
Yeah. So say when you're doing like your presence series, which was, the meditation kind of one, was that kind of envisaged to be something that was going to be sold? And was it done with people's, artwork on the wall in mind?
Yes. So that one specifically was not only, can you relate to this moment and this feeling, but I really liked the idea of having this work, the kind of the positive side of the series, the more kind of calm, centered feeling, have potentially, if someone has a meditation practice, generally you can do it in the same place all the time. They've kind of found a little area to make that be a little corner of the room, or if, super luxurious, you have your own meditation room or something, that the work could be placed in there as something when you're kind of settling in and your eyes aren't closed yet. And it's almost something to look at, almost like a mind palette cleanser.
Yeah, like a tool. something that's useful yeah.
So just seeing what other ways the work can be utilized besides just, oh, look at that, it's pretty on the wall.
Right. Yeah. Giving it a function, making it functional.
Yeah, functional. Yeah.
And so how does that work with that side of your business? I mean, you've got this very creative, artistic side. And then if you're creating this art with resale and income in mind, how are you dealing with that? Because, I mean, the business side and the outside is two different sides of the brain pretty much. Is that something that you had to learn?
Oh, yeah. Coming from being I'm going to be a potter and like have my own little studio, and somehow that I'm going to have a business. That was where I was starting with in high school. You know, I can't really recall a specific moment in time where my mindset shifted. It's been a very slow and steady shift, but also just having other artists that I'm talking to and seeing how they're doing things. And mostly I talk with people that aren't photographers, mostly painters. I find myself around painters a lot, and we have a totally different process. So I have to translate it to the photography world, but just seeing how they run things. But then also my partner Brandon has a background in law and a marketing degree, and so he came on as my business manager a few years ago, and just because he was already helping me with a lot of things. And usually I'd get down a rabbit hole, and then I'd be like, hey, what do you think I should do? And he's like, well, you shouldn't have done this and this. So, and then we realized, okay, actually, if you're some input at the beginning, maybe we go down a path that isn't difficult, that is beneficial for everyone. And that is, he's been a tremendous help of being able to, just having someone outside that really has your best interest in mind and wants to see you be successful, but can separate the emotion of these images as your children, as like the things you've birthed, now it is a product, and it is a wonderful product. And there has to be heart in there to have it be a wonderful product, but you are a business selling a product, and that's okay to think that way.
Yeah. And I think that is something that separates a lot of successful photographers, especially fine art photographers, is the ones who can separate themselves from their work. I have a trouble. Yeah. I cannot separate myself from my work, and it drives my wife nuts because she's like, why did you choose that image? I'm like, well, look at the lighting, look what I did there. It's so clever. And she's like, yeah, but it's not a great photo. And I'm the person who's going to buy it. I'm not looking at it going, wow, isn't he clever? So you've got to be objective somehow. And I think that's really hard to be objective about your own work. So having someone else who can kind of look over your shoulder and go, no, these are the ones that are going to be more appealing.
And then
really
also
helps.
you just never know sometimes. I mean, it's also market tested stuff that where you have work out there. And that's what actually I find really helpful about Instagram is that I post almost everything on there as a little bit of a market tester. Are people, interested in, I mean, the likes and comments and stuff, it is a thermometer. It's like, okay, so is this working? Is this resonating with people, and why? And I'm able to immediately ask then and there, okay, hey, why do you like that? Yeah. And, there are a few images that I continue to sell that are older images that I would be okay with retiring, but then they end up selling. And
so people still like them.
Yeah. And then there's other ones that I'm like, come on, that is so awesome. And then there's just like crickets. I'm like, okay, well, that's for me. And, and it doesn't make any of them lesser or better in my eyes, but it's just seeing that, okay, so as that product, so you have bestsellers and you have ones that go on sale. It's like, that's a product.
Yeah. Do you find that you've got a demographic? Like, are you able to see from your sales the types of people that like your work?
For demographic, I generally, because I sell on multiple platforms, but the biggest help of kind of determining the demographic is fairs to be able to
Right.
see people in person and talk with them and get a sense of who they are. Generally, between my like early 30s to mid 50s women who have some extra money lying around that they want to, and that they value home design. They value their, that they are designing their home, or, new homeowners. That direct sales are generally in that way. And there's usually, excuse the pun, undercurrent of some sort of, how many puns? There's just always so many puns when it comes to talking about underwater. It's ridiculous.
Don't even.
I'm drowning in
them.
puns. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, don't get me started. I can pun all day. Okay.
That's a whole nother podcast. Yeah.
That's a whole nother. So, there's usually either like a dance background, or I used to swim in high school, or I grew up with a pool sort of background of people who buy my work, that there is either a dance or swim background involved. Yeah. And
how much of that kind of feedback that you get at these art fairs and from Instagram and stuff, how much does that change your style? Does it at all? Are you influenced by these people in terms of what you're creating, or are you just creating what you create and hoping they like it?
I'm influenced by seeing what sells and what doesn't sell. And early on, the biggest feedback that I found from seeing what people are engaged with and and what they say, oh, that's pretty, but they don't buy it. When it comes to when I'm taking a picture of a person that is not a celebrity, why would someone have a picture of a person they don't know in their house? And the biggest thing that it came down to was it's not a portrait. I rarely have the face be ever looking at the camera. Like they never looking at the camera. And if the face is visible, it's a pretty far away shot, and it's still really about everything altogether. It's not about this person and their expression on their face solely. It's really about their body language. And a lot of times I end up having the face obscured. Either they're turned away, turned to the side, hair in front of their face. I used to work with a makeup artist every time I shoot. In the last year or so, I've just not been using a makeup artist because I'm like, well, I never really see their face. So it's kind of it's a waste for them to be working. And, and then it's about it's the body language and what they're saying. And then also I'm realizing that the generally women that are buying my work, there's a level of them either putting themselves in that position or kind of being able to have an imagination of what that person looks like. Yeah. And so I think, and that you're able to then kind of immerse into it rather than stare at a person staring back at you.
Yeah. Which I think is an interesting, again, a thing that we as photographers I don't think we think about that to start with, because we're so enraptured by our own work. Mm-hmm. But again, my wife, who is always correct, doesn't want pictures of other people on her walls, which is totally fine, Yeah. And if you are like yourself, your business your income is based on selling prints, right?
Partially.
Well, part of it, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you want to make sure that that's as attractive to people as possible. So giving them something that is, obscured so you can't really tell what it is, or they can picture themselves in the image or whatever. That's the thing that brings them in. Yeah.
And it isn't necessarily, that feedback just sort of made sense to me, but then also it didn't necessarily change my work that much. I just, I'm not now avoiding portraits. It's because it really always was about the body. Yeah. And it was always about the body anyway.
Yeah. Because you're a dance photographer.
Yeah. It's the dance. Yeah. And the dance isn't necessarily only about someone's facial expression. The facial expression, absolutely, it plays an integral part, but it's one of the parts.
Well, to be honest, for me, because I come at from it from a different point of view. I am a portrait photographer. I take pictures of clients who pay me to take their photos, as opposed to me creating artworks that are going to go and be sold somewhere. So my job is to make sure that you can totally see who that person is.
Right. Yeah.
But
which is so hard. I mean, I applaud you for that, because that's hard. It's very hard to have the client be the model. They have an idea of what they look like, whether it's based in reality or not, and then put them underwater. That's hard. That's really hard.
It is hard. Yeah, it is. And what you were saying before about having so many throwaway images is that I have more but I have the images, I throw away the images that you're probably keeping, because the ones that are, if their face is obscured by their hair, I'm throwing that away. All those sorts of things. But I love those photos. I love, me personally, I love the photo of, wow, like it looks like she's got a mask of hair. You can only see the back of that guy's head. I love the mystery of those sorts of things. For me personally, that's my aesthetic.
And it's just this lost in the moment. I feel like that's what I'm always chasing, is this lost in a moment.
Yeah.
Sort of feeling it. Yeah.
Letting go. It's that private moment. Yeah.
Which it can't be manufactured. It has to just be caught.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think one of the things that is beautiful about underwater as a tool is that it makes those moments happen organically. Yeah. Because if someone just lets go and sinks, then that's generally what happens, is that there is an element of them letting go.
And there are so many things that they have to think about that I think the camera ends up being the last on the list. Yeah. So I give them a good little to-do list, and then it keeps growing throughout the day of like, okay, remember we're doing this and this and this. And then now remember, make sure this, but always keeping, a positive tone and trying to slowly build that. So it's not overwhelming, because no one can really keep all that straight when you're also holding your breath and their body is reacting. Their body is saying, totally. Hey, you don't have air. So they're going to be in a little bit of a state of fight or flight, if not a lot, depending on their experience level. Yeah. And so they're going to, being lost in the moment is, they're definitely not necessarily as focused on the camera as you are outside of the water.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so we were talking about your incomes, part of your income stream coming from prints. As a photographer in this kind of COVID-19 craziness, how has that affected your print sales at all, or is it just affecting your ability to create new work?
It has affected my print sales for the better, oddly enough. I have been very surprised, happily surprised, that a good amount of interior designers have been reaching out too. I think everyone being in their home, not necessarily all out of work, but maybe working from home. And so their income hasn't changed, that they are now in their home looking at their walls, wanting a change. And it was probably a timing thing that I was included. So I sell my work also through Saatchi Art. Yeah. And so they for the month of March was International Women's Month. And they put together a catalog they chose 100 of their top female artists. And I was honored to be included in that list. And they created a printed catalog and then one image per artist, and then sent that out to thousands of people of collectors, probably past collectors and everything. So I got a influx of print sales after that. So that just so happened that came out in mid-March. So it was just timing wise, that was kind of right where everything was kind of shutting down. And I was definitely, as anyone, freaking out a little bit, don't have any savings. So just sort of like, okay, what can I sign up for? Cause I don't pay into unemployment and all that. So, and it was definitely a good timing thing that amount of marketing and promotion was happening on my behalf without having to pay for it. And Saatchi Art has been absolutely fantastic. Everybody who works there is just truly there to help artists sell work. And so I've really enjoyed my relationship with them also, because they're based in LA too. So I've been able to have a personal relationship with them. But to have that exposure has been really great. And it was a wonderful confidence boost to know that even when things are incredibly upended and difficult for a lot of people around the world, there are still a bunch of people that are excited and able to buy my work all over the world.
Yeah.
So if I can do that now, I mean, it just had this renewed drive to just get my work out there as much as I can, and in as many platforms as I can, because there are people out there that will be excited to find my work, and that is a mindset that I forget sometimes, but that is something that all artists, it would just be it benefit from that mindset of, instead of like, oh, maybe somebody will like it, well, I like it. It's I can't wait to find all of these people who are dying to find my work, that they're going to be so excited when they find this. That mindset for marketing has helped me, because generally, coming from the artist point of view and having to learn the basics of marketing and everything, it feels very like, I don't ever want to be salesy. I don't want to be like, hey, buy my stuff. I'm having a hard time finding, initially I was having a hard time finding the voice and the tone of how I sell my work. I initially felt like I was just regurgitating old advertisements.
And when your voice and your tone, are you talking about the copy, like the written word and the sales kind of stuff?
That, but then also just in person, at fairs, which has, paused for now, but I have learned so much from selling at fairs, but being able to learn how to sell to someone, and to have someone there be captivated by your work, and to see it, and to have the opportunity to kind of circle back to, it's not just one gallery building, that it's just all solo show me, that it's a fair where there's multiple artists and they're able to see multiple things. And so it has a little bit of a softer sell, that they are choosing my work from the menu of artists that are available.
Yeah. And I guess you're getting that instant feedback as well, as you're kind of selling to them. Kind of gauge whether it's working or not.
Yeah, body language is a big thing, and just just reading the room of seeing where they're coming from, and not necessarily completely changing my personality to fit someone, but to know really when to be quiet.
Yeah.
And when to be able to
approach.
Yeah. And like after they say, okay, I'll take it, that's when you say, great, thank you. Don't continue to sell.
Yeah, exactly. That's
the big thing for me. It's like, yeah, that's great. And then you're also going to like this and this. It was like, they said sold, shut up.
Exactly.
Process, the confidence in selling the way that you want to sell is a process that takes a while to get an idea of what is best for you, because you can look up all the articles you want about how to sell. Some things, it's a balancing act of like, some things feel like, ooh, that doesn't seem like me. Does it not seem like me because I'm learning something new. And so therefore, yes, I have not done that before. And that is tried and true. It works. So just go out of your comfort zone and do it. Or is this really just not resonating with me, and I'm going to find a different approach?
Have you found that your, I guess, sales personality, which is not different from you, it's just a different way of kind of presenting yourself, has that changed over time? Like your initial gut reaction of how to sell when you first started, has it changed? Do you think you're doing better things now than you were when you first started?
Definitely. I've gotten a lot more comfortable with my own pricing, which I think is I think that's such a difficult thing for artists to feel comfortable about their pricing. Being able to have having your price for your art set to not only the retail price be something that you can explain and have an understanding of why it's that price. Also to be okay with taking up to a 50% hit on that and still be okay.
Yeah.
So to be able to be selling something and making an okay profit from 50% off, and then still be okay with asking someone to pay 100%. That
Yeah.
was my biggest hurdle, was starting off in LA doing shows. I was pressured to increase my price.
Who pressured
And
you?
the galleries,
Right.
because on the one hand, they're like, well, you're only getting 50% of this, remember? So make sure this is worth it for you. And your material costs are coming out of your side. But then also they need to basically have collectors take them seriously. As like, oh, this is worth something. There's the little bit of the markup factor of this is important, or I don't know, any kind of fluff.
Because there is a kind of, like, as photographers, we come into this, it's something that we've kind of done from a hobby, and then we come into it as a full-time job or whatever, and none of us are really know how to price our work. Like we feel like we're, I don't know, if we're charging a lot of money, we feel like we're ripping people off or something. Like for us, it's hard to know your own value. But for the people that are coming from the other side, if it's cheap, they expect it to be cheap. But if it's expensive, they think, oh, this has got value.
Right.
Why is it this expensive? Let me find out. And then they work out whether it's for them or not.
Right. And, there's a lot of psychology that goes into it, as far as, like you price something at 1950 versus 2000, that kind of the whole psychology of pricing things, why, $199.99 works.
And there's a psychology as well of round numbers. And I don't mean round numbers as in the actual shape of the final number.
Yeah. If there's lots of zeros, people get freaked out, and, I don't go to the extent of being like 95.99, but I definitely notice that the pieces that I do have priced at 2000 very rarely sell. Yeah. I think that there's a whole science behind the psychology of pricing and everything, but then also like the idea of, okay, finding a price that like really incorporates all of the like a material cost price is something that's very easy to determine. But then what is the value of you? What is that price? Yeah. What is the rarity of what you're creating? And that, I think, is something that's really, it's hard to determine. It's definitely, it fluctuates, and it can change definitely over time. And different work could potentially have a different price. I generally try to keep my pricing all the same. And then also I'm doing limited editions. And there's a whole other pricing structure with that, where some artists, as they sell more in the edition, the price of the print increases.
Oh, that's interesting.
Usually in sections, where, say, if it's an edition of 15, the first 5 are a certain price, then the second 5 and the third 5, they're all different prices, because now they're becoming more rare. And so rarity does play a part in the price. I have yet to do that. I want to keep the price the same as much as I can. If I'm getting towards the very, very end of an edition, I might raise the price a little bit. But I'm trying to balance the kind of the value and the scarcity, the originality of what I create, with making sure that the final retail price is something reasonable, that I could say, if people have, a couple grand saved, that someone that could reasonably, I could save up for it, or I have some disposable income, but it isn't like 10 grand, it's something that reasonably a good amount of people could afford. Right.
And is there a market value? A market rate? Are you kind of comparing your prices to other artists, or is it a very solo kind of pricing?
I take into account other artists' work, but everyone is at a different place. So I have looked at other underwater art. I actually check out Zena Holloway's work, but also I take into account, not only she's in London, and so we have, different buying habits and everything, but that's not her sole thing. She's mostly a commercial person. So it's like everyone has so many different factors. So I check it out and I look to see, okay, if I'm in the ballpark, okay, cool. If I'm way off, then let's do some more research. But I've mostly just sort of, I take that as one element. Not to say, oh, you priced that at that size at that price, got it, done, that's mine. Because we have different material costs, we have all sorts of different factors that are at play. So and then I think the biggest factor is the market price. It's like, what are people buying it at that price? Okay, then that's its value. It's not its value until someone buys it.
Yeah. Do you have work that you have changed the price on because it either sold or it didn't?
No,
or is the price
because
the price?
The price is based on size, and so if it's not, if a certain piece isn't selling, I consider it to be the issue of the image that
Right,
isn't
yeah.
necessarily kind of resonating with people. Yeah.
Do you then change the price on that piece?
No, I usually just say, okay, take it off my store,
Right.
because I have an online store, and so I'm able to just sort of kind of take things off, and then I am always making new work. And I have almost too much on my store. I mean, it's not, I don't consider it too much, but it could be maybe a little not overwhelming, but it's like, oh wow, I have a lot of options, in my store. So I don't want to just continue to add more. When I add more, I evaluate what's there already and decide, okay, are there older pieces that have kind of run their course, where it's like, yeah, they've sold in the last few years. I was, a couple of years after making it, and then it died out. Okay, so it's time to retire that image.
Right. Yeah.
Even if the edition is, if there's still prints left in the edition and it's not for sale, I just don't advertise it for sale.
And I guess that kind of adds to that rarity as well, right? Like it's, oh, I saw this, she had this image, but it's gone now. Maybe it's sold out. I'll contact her and see if she's still got it. And then you're like, yeah, but it's, it's at the end of the run. So it's now this kind of price.
Wouldn't necessarily change the price. I mean, I give discounts to people, but for specific situations. When I work with interior designers, it's across the board, generally 20% off of retail.
Right, because they're buying more than one image.
And that's their cut.
Piece.
So they're not charging the client more than retail.
Right, so you're building a cut in for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when people buy multiple pieces, I usually add a little bit of a discount if they're buying multiple pieces. Yeah.
How does it work for you? So you've got online sales, and then you've also got the art fairs. How do the art fairs work? Are you selling actual physical stuff, or do you just have it like a showroom and then create prints based on what you've sold?
In selling the physical piece for art fairs, I've actually started to. This was 10 years ago. I started making a whole kind of different process of work that is smaller, and they're open edition, because the editions are based on the size of the print. And so a lot of artists have kind of smaller pieces that's open edition at the smaller size, and the limited edition are larger prints. So I have a whole handmade process where I print it out on really heavyweight matte paper, and then I have these wood panels, birch panels that have a kind of a frame on the back. And so I glue it to the panel, press it overnight, trim it, and then I paint over to seal it with this clear gel medium. So that seals it in, but then also has a clear brushstroke texture, and it UV coats it and it's water resistant. And so it's kind of all ready to go, doesn't need to be then framed behind glass. And so it becomes a little bit more of like wall decor rather than fine art.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a different category. And so then I price it accordingly, because the largest size I go is 16 by 20 for those pieces. Yeah. And then I go all the way down to like a little 8-inch diameter circle. I've been doing, because they make the panels in circles, and so I've been making them in circles too. Yeah, so that work is what I sell at art fairs generally.
And then and that's what you've already invested and already created. Are you taking orders for stuff you haven't created there, or is it basically selling what you've got in stock?
Generally, it's what I have in stock because people really like to be able to just kind of take it and go. And then I gallery wall them all over the booth. And so there's I mean, usually I make like 60 pieces for a show.
Right. Yeah. So there's investment up front to get the show running. Yeah.
Yeah. But the majority of the investment really is my time making them, because I print at home. And so it's like I have my own printer, but it's the matte paper, it's the glue, it's the panels. But the majority of the investment is my time, and they sell really well. And so I'm able to, I keep an inventory of pieces. So I have all of those listed on my store as well. And so
Right.
if I happen to have it in stock, I just ship it out right away. But and people can order them if they're technically out of stock, and then I just make it to order.
Okay. So you're not doing any drop shipping or anything. You are actually creating and having an inventory of stuff. So every order comes through you, not like you're passing it off to a fulfillment company or anything.
No print on demand or anything. No, because I want to make everything myself and have it all be quality controlled through me.
Yeah, that's great, because I think there's so many print on demand, and there's so many drop shipping kind of companies now, but the quality is just not there if you're doing fine art, and especially with the way you're doing the wood and the different panels.
Right.
That's something that only you could really be doing.
Right. And for fine art prints, I have a printer that I go to that's out in the brewery called Contact Photo Lab, and they're absolutely fantastic. And I love working with them. They had closed in March for COVID, and I had to find an online retailer and the online printer, and they were great. But, just this last print that I got the color was incredibly off. And I was like, okay, good thing that I go through me, that I make sure, even though it takes a lot more time to have it shipped to me and then shipped to the client, I not only need to sign it, but I really need to inspect every time.
And what do you do in that case? Do you send stuff back, or do you?
I have them remake it. Yeah, so I've had them remake it, and just in timing of this last time, my Contact Photo Lab has now opened up again, and so I just said, hey, give me a refund, and then I just ordered through Contact, so I can see it. But also shipping has been so delayed, and so it's not really a matter of how long it takes to get remade. It's how long it takes to get reshipped to me, which, if a client has already paid for it and I've already said, yes, it's on its way, I don't like being able to having to say, actually, sorry, wait another week. Yeah. So I just want to get work out there.
So in terms of diversifying your work and your income streams, how does that work for you? Have you got more than just the online print and the print sales in general as your income stream, or have you got other things happening as well?
I've got a lot of little avenues that I think has been my focus for probably the last 3 or 4 years, is just diversify. How do I get my income to stabilize, and not wanting to have a part-time job somewhere as an employee. I am generally a good employee because I like following the rules, but I am not a happy employee because I don't like having somebody tell me how to do things.
You like following the rules, but you're not so happy that there are rules. Yeah,
or if the rules that I don't agree with, that I can't change them. Especially coming from being my own business owner for so long, it's like I can't be house trained again. I can't. I have to stay outside. So I've definitely kind of been always thinking of how do I continue to earn money the baseline, whether or not it's me actually taking pictures, is when I'm earning money, is it something that makes me happy and fulfills me, and hopefully also gives something positive back. And so I do print sales. I do shoots on occasion, commissions. The commissions are really case by case. And the commissions I have worked on have been fantastic. But it just really needs to be the right fit. It isn't just, take my picture. It's, someone that really kind of understands my work as an artist rather than a technician that can facilitate a picture for them.
Yeah.
And then they say, place me in your art. And that, if that's the mindset, then it always is just a great end result. And I really love that because it's another collaboration. And so I do those sort of print sales, and I assist here and there too, but only, just for my business partner, which I'll get into. I also co-own a photo studio. Yeah, it's called Moon 7 Collective in downtown LA. And so that's actually where I live. That's a live workspace in an art colony.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, it's called the Santa Fe Art Colony there. It's the last remaining true art colony where you have to be an artist to live here.
Wow. And so how do you prove that?
Business. So we had to show our LLC papers and everything that we're a business.
Right. Okay.
So we are a business we're an artist collective, but mainly our business is a photo studio rental for photo and video shoots. And so my business partner, Liz Brett's also an incredible photographer, and my partner, Brandon Henderson. And so all three of us live here and run the photo studio. And so then that's now another income stream.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, not right now because we're closed, but we will be continuing when we open soon.
But that's the beauty of diversifying, right? You've got your print sales, which are reasonably passive, or at least don't require human contact particularly. And then you've got this studio that when it does open up again, then that's your other kind of income stream.
Yeah, and the studio offsets, pays part of the rent too. So we're able to live in a 3,000 square foot beautiful space for a very affordable price because the studio pays part of it too.
Exactly.
And so it has perks more than just a paycheck. But yeah, so that's another way to diversify. And then about 4 years ago, I decided to go to massage therapy school. And so I'm a certified massage therapist as well. And I don't work in a spa. I've never really found that to be something I would want to do, mostly because they are horrendously underpaid and overworked. But it's, I'm mobile and have a handful of clients, and then they refer me to their people. So it's all kind of referral based because I'm going into people's homes and I need to trust, they need to trust. And I found that as a dancer, having a dance background, massage really came very naturally to me. And when I was getting into that, and putting that out there on Facebook, there was a lot of confusion. People were like, whoa, wait a minute. Are you not a photographer anymore? That's such a, wow, you're a jack of all trades. You're just doing all of these crazy different things. And to that, I say that it is absolutely still completely me, that I've realized that I'm a healer. I like to give instruments of healing. And that is the undercurrent of my photography work, is that sense of being able to have someone see my work and feel something generally positive, feeling good, and having that art therapy. And so, having a different type of therapy and another way of communicating that, yes, once again, isn't talking.
That's
it
true.
just, it makes sense, and to be able to interact with someone in that way is really, really special. To be able to make someone feel physically and emotionally better is really rewarding. So it's within my ethos of how I want to earn money. So
totally. Yeah. And it fits within your ethos of, the working for yourself thing. It fits into your schedule. It fits into what you need to do, rather than being employed by someone where you've got to fit into their boxes. You've got your own little empire. It's driven by you. It's things are decided by you. And I think that's what we all a lot of us, I think, strive for, is having that autonomy to be able to do what we want, when we want, and to be able to earn money from it.
Yeah. And it's a constant process of I have been recently trying to educate myself and test the waters. Sorry, I keep punning. of licensing. Yeah. The world of licensing. And I ended up getting into this book. It's called Art, Money, Success by Maria Brophy. She's in San Clemente, so in this area, and she manages her husband's art career, and licensing is a big part of how they earn money, and it's passive income. Once you get it all dialed in, it's set it up and forget it, and then checks just sort of come in, and I'm like, I want to get on that train. But I'm finding, as a photographer who also sells limited edition, decently priced work, that is hard to be doing both.
Why is that? Does one conflict with the other?
Depending on it's how you're like. I've licensed a specific image to a specific use, like a book publisher for a book cover for a magazine and everything. Where like I know exactly where it's going, how it's being utilized, that the company is reputable, that it's going to look good. That I am totally open for still. But it's the mass. Basically, it's the art that you find in Target, Wayfair, Bed Bath & Beyond. That is licensed artwork that is sold all over and various price ranges, but generally very, very, very affordable.
And very so it's different. The artwork that you can buy from Target. It's not like, advertising stuff. It's you can go and buy a canvas.
Yeah, it's wall art. Yeah. But also could be licensed to be put on certain things, but generally photography isn't really used for the same as I say, like illustration or painting. Like an illustration can be used for lots more things, textiles and rugs and, all sorts of things that photography doesn't necessarily translate as well.
Yeah.
But so I'm finding not only is there a limitation in my medium for licensing, but also what would I give them? How would I give them work that first of all would never be an image that I'm also selling as limited edition print? But, what is that image? It's still going to be looking like my style. And then I am now potentially devaluing my own work out into the world.
Why would you go and why would you pay $2,000 for a Mallory Morrison when you can go to Target and get one for $30?
Or discounted or marked up, or, I don't have that printing control that I have, I would be giving it all away. And so I'm still navigating that, and I'm not closing the door on that, but the mass licensing, it just doesn't seem right. And so it's just like through the process of trying to continue to diversify and really, really hunting for that passive income within the art world, also trying to stay true to myself as an artist and keep the value of the work for myself and my collectors.
And I guess that's the tightrope, right? Like, keeping your credibility, whilst also trying to maximize the amount of income you get from it.
Yeah.
And art is always at odds with that.
Yeah. Because I want as many people as possible to see my work. That, and
as many people to be happy to have you on their walls. But that's the joy you get from selling prints.
Right. And so that's, I think, where licensing, where the initial idea of licensing and interest came from. I was like, okay, well, the more people that have it, the better. But that isn't necessarily going to be always the case. Like I have to take into consideration a lot of other factors.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah.
No, that's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about the licensing side of things too much. And having all those different streams from one photo shoot, you could create all these different kind of products and potential income.
Right. Yeah. And being so specific about what I shoot, not only being, dance photographer, but being, shooting underwater and just shooting, pretty much primarily women, where does that go? So another avenue that I'm kind of going down is working with showrooms. So generally I'm not necessarily having a lot of work that's printed in frames ready for gallery shows, because I'm not really doing gallery shows that much anymore. And because I haven't yet to find that actually be financially viable for me, not till I get to a certain point where I'm like pre-selling out before even the show, before the show opens and it's a big gallery. That's just not the place for me right now. So I am considering actually producing more physical work pre-sale to show in showrooms and it's within the interior design world, which as far as marketing goes, I'm very much marketing not only to direct sale to the buyer, but a big portion of how I market and my attention goes towards working to build relationships with interior designers and art consultants. And they go to showrooms.
And by showrooms, you mean this is where an interior designer would go to pick out furniture and fixtures and artwork.
Yeah, they have little vignettes of whole setups of everything. So I would be a piece of that puzzle rather than only art. And so they see the couch and the lamp and my art, and they're like, "Ooh, all of that together. Yes, I'll take it."
Yeah, I think that's beautiful because I think I've seen. I think I've seen on your website or on social media you've done mock-ups of what this artwork will look like, in a lounge room or whatever.
Yeah,
and it's always nicer to see it like that.
Yeah, and also to see it to scale. So what I've been doing recently, which has just been so helpful for me and for the interested buyer, is to do mock-ups. And so I do digital mock-ups. They take a picture of their wall with some sort of marker in there. If it's like above the bed, you see the head of the bed frame, or if it's a couch, you see a living room, you see the couch, some sort of marker that gives me a dimension, and then I can to scale put in the image, and so they can preview it. And that has turned into not only a way for them to really feel confident about their purchase, and that there's now not really as many surprises later, but it turns into a unintentional upsell, because they see the 2x2 foot piece, and then they see the 3x3 foot piece on the wall, and they're like, yeah, the 3x3 foot looks better.
Oh yeah.
And I don't have to tell them that. I don't have to be like, yeah, don't you want the bigger one that's more expensive?
It's their idea.
And I show them that I don't just show them the big pieces on their walls. I give them the options and give them the choice to decide for themselves. I have my preferences of what I think looks best, and it's not always bigger is better, but it's their home. They decide what looks best. And plus, with a smaller print, you can also do larger matting and framing, and you can fill a space differently than just with the print, but.
And I get a series, then you could be, rather than the one big print, how about 4 of smaller ones?
Right. And the benefit of being so niche is that the majority of my work talks to each other.
Yeah. You have a very constant aesthetic through your work, which I think is beautiful because it all works together.
Yeah, and then it ends up like being able to kind of gallery wall together. I've had collectors with the pieces that I do on wood for the art fairs have collected multiple pieces and have kind of created their own little gallery wall. And it's a kind of a creative exercise for them and a creative expression for them of which images they choose to talk to each other.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
Be next to each other.
Yeah.
So it's like they have now a collaborative part of the process of how they're displaying their work. My work on their walls is what if they are having 3 of my pieces, how do they want them to be displayed together?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's such a great way of doing it. It's a whole side of things that for me as a portrait photographer, I don't particularly think about a lot. But to hear from your point of view that this is how your business is run, like this is the basis for your business, it really gives me ideas of how I can use those sort of tools myself. How can I create work that is more attractive to go on people's walls and use these kind of avenues to change my income stream. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I think that there's so much to be learned, and it just feels pretty elusive. I definitely feel like I'm kind of groping around in the dark a lot of times, trying to figure out how to go about building this business the way that I want to, without really that much of an example set to follow.
Is this something that you're looking to maybe share with other photographers in workshops or in mentoring?
Good question. So right now, actually, on the workshops, I have been cooking up a workshop for a little while now that I was planning on doing this year that I will be doing next year. That I rented out a whole micro resort in Palm Springs with a beautiful pool, so we can have it all to ourselves. And we'll have a max of like 8 students. And the first one, I want to kind of do it in a series. The first one is going to be basically, it's the foundations. So what I'm hoping is that, if someone has had maybe one experience shooting underwater, maybe borrowed a friend's housing, or, even did it on their phone, they've had some sort of, they've tried it once and they're like, whoa, this is overwhelming. How do I do this? I want to know more. To then be able to kind of, to have a 3-day, weekend with me to really kind of, to take the technical side, like the mystery of that out of it. So then that can kind of open them up to the conceptual. And then I'm thinking that the next workshop would be the conceptual. And then following that would be the business.
Yeah. So it's the whole package, the whole workflow. Yeah. And then kind of repeat that cycle. And because I do find myself asking myself in my head when I'm trying to figure out a new path, or like, okay, I made a print cell that way. How did that's good. Noted. I always think in my head, I want other artists to know about this. I am excited to teach other artists how to do this. So I'm at the point now that I'm like, okay, I have some things figured out, but I'm still working. So I definitely have plenty of things to start sharing, but I'm still on that path too. And I guess I guess that the lesson here is I'm always going to be on that path. So it's not I figured it out now. Check. Okay, now I can teach it. It's like we're always, and we're learning too when we're teaching too. Yeah, exactly. And
so guiding people through the process, but not starting at the business side first. It's like we need to make the product first. We need to start there. Yeah, that's
very true.
Yeah,
Mallory, this has been amazing. Yeah, it's very, very motivating. Yeah, it's really great. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and all the knowledge that you've kind of picked up on the business side of stuff. I think it's really invaluable, and I think people get a lot out of it.
Great. Yeah. And I'm very open ears too for anyone who has questions too. Get me on Instagram, Mallory Morrison. It's my Instagram. There's all my links and everything on there too. But I'm open book. If you have questions, I'd be happy to help.
Well, we do have a Facebook group on Facebook, obviously. So we'll add you to there. And then if people have got questions, then hopefully you can try and answer them for them.
Perfect. Yeah. Wonderful.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mallory. And we'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And as always, if you like the podcast, please subscribe. If you'd like to connect with us or just learn more about my guests, you can hit our website at theunderwaterpodcast.com or on Instagram or Facebook. Also check out our regular live streams on YouTube. Links will be in the show notes. If you'd like to know more about my underwater photography workshops and mentoring, you can find me at brettstanley.com. The Underwater Podcast is presented and produced by me, Brett Stanley, and our music is Neo by Oh Boy. Keep creating, everyone. I'll see you in the water.